And so there was this mass conversion in the 8th century. And you can fact check me on that too. I think it was the 8th century where the Khazarians mass converted to Judaism as the faith. Where the Khazarians mass converted to Judaism as the faith. Where the Khazarians mass converted to Judaism as the faith. So Kyrie Irving, at the time, he still might be a basketball player for the Brooklyn Nets, tweeted a link to a documentary, absent commentary. He didn't tweet this and say, I agree with this. He didn't tweet this and say, like, I disagree with this. He just tweeted a link to a readily available documentary that was on Amazon, and he said nothing. And the next thing you knew, he was a mainstream story, and he was at risk of losing his job as a basketball player.
I went on the Amazon Prime. I was like, you know what, let me see if there are any documentaries on Yahweh. So went in the search bar, typed in Yahweh, that came up. Went out and shared it on my platform. That was my night. In terms of the backlash or what people call it, we're in 2022. History is not supposed to be hidden from anybody. And I'm not a divisive person when it comes to religion. I embrace all walks of life. You see it on all my platforms. I talk to all races, all cultures, all religions. And my response would be, it's not about educating yourself on what Semitism is and what anti-Semitism is. It's really about learning the root words of where these come from and understanding that this is an African heritage that is also belonging to the people. Africa is in it, whether we want to dismiss it or not. So the claims of anti-Semitism and who are the original chosen people of God, and we go into these religious conversations and it's a big no-no.
And the next thing you knew, he was a mainstream story, and he was at risk of losing his job as a basketball player. And the title of the documentary was From Hebrews, to Negroes. And if he had just tweeted it and the media didn't react with such insanity, probably no one would have watched it. I'm serious. Like it was a nothing thing, but they made such a big deal out of it that I remember watching the situation go down and going, okay, what is in this documentary that people are freaking out so much that the NBA has given him, you'll recall this, a list of 6 demands, a list of 6 action items that he must complete in order to return to the franchise, okay? Absurd. Do you remember this headline that was going on? This is what Kyrie Irving must do to get his life back for having tweeted out a link to a documentary that's available on Amazon. Not Jeff Bezos, but Kyrie Irving is at fault. Not Jeff Bezos for making it readily available on Amazon. The first set of things that he had to do, the first thing he had to do was he had to issue an apology for posting a link to the movie, condemn the harmful and false content, and make it clear that he does not have anti-Jewish beliefs. Secondly, he had to complete the anti-hate causes that the Irving and the Nets and the ADL, I'll keep that topic, we're going to talk about more about the ADL today, agreed upon in their joint release, which included a $500,000 donation toward causes and organizations that work to eradicate hate and intolerance in communities. He was then told he had to complete sensitivity training created by the Nets. He was then told he had to complete anti-Semitic, anti-hate training designed by the Nets, and meet with representatives from the ADL as well as Jewish community leaders in Brooklyn. And the last one was after completing steps 1 through 5, he had to meet with the owner of the Nets, Joe Tsai, and lead franchise officials and demonstrate the lessons that he learned. Okay, so this was just like a whipping, a public whipping. It made entirely no sense. And I don't think he actually ended up doing any of that, because then there was outrage and outcry, rightfully so, from the Black community going, what are you doing right now? What did he do that was so wrong?
You responded to Joe Tsai's comment about Kyrie on Twitter. What about that bothered you? And what about Joe Tsai's comment, and then what, if anything, that the league has done has bothered you?
Yeah, his response was alarming to me. I tweeted it out yesterday. He didn't say that the organization was working together to get Kyrie back on the floor. He said that he had more work to do. And our society has more work to do, including Joe Tsai. And it's 2022. It takes 10 minutes of time to see who, these business owners, corporations, et cetera, who they're associated with, who they're doing business with, and who they're affiliated with. And I'm vice president of the union, and it's part of my job to protect our players legally. And to see Phil Knight first come out and condemn, Kyrie, and also see Joe Tsai say he has more work to do, I think it's time for a larger conversation. And Adam came out and said a statement that he doesn't believe Kyrie Irving is anti-Semitic. Yet he's still suspended indefinitely. So those are my thoughts.
So when I hear what Kyrie Irving has to go through in order to be reinstated, I'm appalled. I'm appalled. And let me give you examples of how I feel like we don't have the same energy and hold other people who have dealt with racial tropes accountable. So when Sarah Silverman does blackface, or when Don Imus says nappy-headed hose, or when Howard Stern calls somebody the N-word in a skit, or when Brett Favre takes money from the state of Mississippi, we don't ask them to get sensitivity training. We don't ask them to donate $500,000. We don't ask them to meet with the Black National Caucus. They apologize, and then you know what? The rest of the world moves on. But what I feel like is happening here, and that's how in the Black community, like we've been told that's how the process works, right? Think about that, Britt. That's how the process works. Oh, somebody does a blackface. Oh, it was a misunderstanding. We got it. Okay. You know, is that person really racist? Probably not. Was it ignorant? Probably so. Okay. We understand it. We move forward. We don't like it. We would love to hold them accountable. But society and having a lot of Black people in positions of power, we don't have the governability to do that. But what we feel like happens with Kyrie is even after an apology, it's not enough. We feel like there needs to be more. And a lot of people I've spoken to over the last couple of days talk about this thing. Older mentors of mine talk about buck breaking.
And of course, because of the way my brain works, when I see the media overreact, I just go, what's in this documentary? I mean, I think that's called the Streisand effect. Like when you go so crazy about something that people wouldn't have noticed, then suddenly go, okay, well, what am I not supposed to see in this documentary? And I, of course, instantly watched it. And it was, by the way, very poorly put together, which is why it made it even crazier. It seems like a very budget film that was put together. It looks almost like a PowerPoint, to be honest. And I remember watching this going, how could this documentary have caused this much craziness in the media? And then I realized that the point of the documentary that it was making that upset, and this is why the ADL got involved, was the documentary makers, that is, were alleging that the current Jewish people that are in Israel are not, in fact, biblical Jews, and instead that the people that were brought over in the transatlantic slave trade from Africa to America were the original Hebrews, okay? So parking aside whether or not you agree with that, I have obviously no idea. How strange is it that that would cause that sort of a reaction? I mean, we live in a time where a man can say he's a woman and a woman can say that she's a man. You can quite literally wake up and pick your gender and pick your species, and people will be affectionate towards you. They feel so bad for you. They have sympathy. It's like we must do more to support these communities. They're not confused as who they are on the inside. But for Kyrie Irving, there was no grace. It was like, no, this is so wrong, and you're going to lose your entire life for even exploring that idea.
I can wholeheartedly say I know Kyrie Irving is not anti-Semitic.
When given the chance to say, are you anti-Semitic or not, he didn't say, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. Right. At the press conference, tell us about that movie, why he did. He said, stop dehumanizing me. And the movie is saying white Jews invented the Holocaust and 6 million Jews didn't get killed. Okay.
Poland agrees to change Auschwitz tablets. After 50 years of deflecting the request of Jewish groups, the Polish government has agreed to change the wording on stone tablets at Auschwitz and Birkenau, the adjacent Nazi camps where more than 1 million Jews died during World War II. The move follows decades of appeals by Jewish groups who say the current plaques do not fully reflect the suffering of Jews there and focus too heavily on the camp's non-Jewish victims. So they're saying that, according to them, at Auschwitz, that number is highlighting those that were non-Jewish. But notice what they say. While thousands of non-Jews were among the estimated 1.5 million killed at Auschwitz, the victims were predominantly Jewish. This is the original tablet. 4 million people suffered and died here at the hands of the Nazis. Murders between the years 1940 and 1945 said 4 million. But then when we go to the newest or the more up-to-date plaque, it says here, forever let this place be a cry of despair and a warning to humanity, where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children. But notice the wording here. It says mainly Jews. So even with this 1.5 million, it's saying they were not all from the Jewish community. It goes from 4 million to 1.5 million. So if you take 2.5 million and subtract that from 6 million, that's going to put you down to 3.5 million. That's just at Auschwitz. So according to the anti-Semitic laws, what they're saying is, if you say or give the proof that I just shared, that there was 2.5 million numbers removed from that overall 6 million number, that can be considered an exaggeration.
One of the things that we try to tell people, and that is, black folks was in the Holocaust. Like when you were highlighting those two references, you know, in the reference it said non-Jewish. But family, what you have to know is that we were in that non-Jewish number. And truth be told, family, that like they don't know exactly, just like, you know, as far as like the number of Ashkenazis, they don't know exactly how many so-called black folks was caught up in the Holocaust either, because one, you know, they weren't really documenting us. Because when it came to, you know, the persecution over in Germany, we had it the worst, family. There's articles out there, family, that talks about how POWs or camps where they kept the prisoners. Well, if a black pilot was shot down, family, normally he wouldn't make it to the camp because they would just take him out back and shoot him, because that was the fate of so-called African Americans or so-called black folks during that time, because Germans, family, they did not like black folks at the time. So that's why our numbers during the Holocaust are massively undercounted, one, and then two, they don't tell you that the Holocaust started first in Africa.
I know that isn't right. Right. There's a gigantic historical record. Jewish people know when you dehumanize us this way, we know what's around the corner.
So in that same statement as those are the tropes that dehumanize Jewish people, the same buck breaking.
What's that? I don't really know what that means, to be perfectly honest.
The slave masters would bring the buck, the one that gets out of line. So all the other slaves would see lash after lash, show them the power to set an example. This is what you must do to fall in line. So when we see the 6 things that Kyrie must do to get his job back, right, that's dehumanizing.
What it led me to think was, it is quite sad when you consider that so many of us have no idea where we come from. Like, that to me was the bigger point, that there are so many people on this planet who have no idea where they come from. I'm one of them. I can't go back beyond a couple of generations. And the reason for that is because of war, it's because of slavery, it's because of large human trafficking efforts that take place.
Again, I'm gonna repeat. I don't know how the label becomes justified, because you guys ask me the same questions over and over again. But this is not gonna turn into a spin around cycle of questions upon questions. I told you guys how I felt. I respect all walks of life and embrace all walks of life. That's where I sit.
I think what people want to hear, though, is just a yes or no on that question. Yes or no.
I cannot be anti-Semitic if I know where I come from.
And one thing, and this is a big thing, by the way, so I'm really hoping that a lot of people who are Jewish are watching this as well, that struck me as really odd when I was learning about Sabbatianism. And this really shocked me in my core, because I've always told you guys I grew up with a large Jewish community. All my best friends were Jewish growing up. And I've always seen like the Star of David, that is a lot of Jewish people wear as a necklace, you know, and I thought that that was associated traditionally somehow with Judaism. And so I was very surprised, and I will ask the question, do you know the history of the Star of David? Why is it being called the Star of David? And I'm just gonna just show you guys this straight up on Wikipedia. So if it's on Wikipedia, basically after they've obscured everything, that just must mean that it's just such an irreversible fact, because you wouldn't even want to admit this. But this is what the entry shows you about the Star of David, because it's actually a very recent thing that has been adopted from the Jewish community. Okay, it's not something stemming from the ancient times. And this is exactly what it reads. It reads that it is a derivative of the seal of Solomon, was used for decorative and mystical purposes by Muslims and Kabbalistic Jews. I want you to remember that, okay? So it's a derivative of the seal of Solomon. King Solomon was used for decorative and mystical purposes by Muslims and Kabbalistic Jews. It also goes on to say that only around 1 millennium later did the star begin to be used as a symbol to identify Jewish communities, a tradition that seems to have started in Prague before the 17th century. I want you to remember that as well. And from there spread to much of Eastern Europe in the 19th century. It came to be adopted by European Jews as a symbol to represent Jewish religion or identity in the same manner the Christian cross identified the religion's believers. The symbol became representative of the worldwide Zionist community after it was chosen as the central symbol on a flag at the first Zionist Congress in 1897. So this is a recent symbol. But I'm going to show you that there is a mention of that star. It is called something else in the Bible. It is referred to, and I'm going to just dig this up for you, something that is known as the Star of Remphan in the Bible, okay? And I'm going to show you that star right now. Here's a picture of it. Oh, you can see if you're Jewish, you're going, oh, that's the Star of David. You can see on that left side there, by the way, that you see a goat and you see it looks like a pharaoh up top there. So you're going, okay, I don't associate this with Judaism whatsoever. And in the Bible, here's where it's mentioned. It says, "Ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." It's also referenced later. It says, "Ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch and your Chian, your images, the star of your god, which ye made to yourself." So what is this referring to? It's referring to the ancient Canaanites.
Diana says, we have a friend who seems to want to delve more and more deeply into conspiracy theories. He told us that the Star of David is actually a satanic symbol widely used in pagan and occult areas. The only thing I can find on the internet about it is that it was introduced by Mr. Rothschild in the 40s and that he was not a believer but had ties to the occult. Can you please tell us the truth behind this symbol? And we are Messianic believers, and we would like to be able to confront these anti-Semitic theories with truth. Thank you for your response. All right, well, let me just tell you, Diana, I've heard this stuff before over the years. I heard you are absolutely right. It's born out of anti-Semitic thinking. It's born out of anti-Semitic thinking. People who want to be opposed to Israel will find anything they can to complain about Israel, anything that is accepted as being the things of Israel, whether it being a kippah or a talit or a Star of David or some other symbology that is associated with Israel. They always want to tie it back to the cult. Here's the reason why. Well, we know we don't want to have anything to do with the devil, right? We don't want to have anything to do with the symbols of the devil. And if all of a sudden all of these things that are symbols of Israel are symbols of the devil, well, then guess what the logic is? So you stay away from Israel and anything to do with Israel. I want to remind you of something. Israel is the name of the kingdom. That's the name of the kingdom. So do you think there's a possibility that the devil, who hates the kingdom of God, could possibly conjure up some lies to deceive people, to get you to follow a lie and get you to go away from the things of the Lord? Yeah, I think that's been his dominant tactic throughout the entire history of mankind. So here's what I say when somebody comes up to me and wants to talk to me about, well, you know, the Star of David, you know, it's a satanic symbol. Get out of my face. Get behind me, Satan. I'm not listening to your lies. You go sell that lie stuff down in the ditch. You get down there with the rest of your anti-Semitic idiots. We're serving the Lord here. And we're going to pursue the light, not the darkness. And we don't waste our energy on stupid arguments going around to defame other people. Believe me, there's enough demons in this world and there's enough evil in this world. We don't have to go searching for it out of God's people. Let's encourage God's people and strengthen God's people and edify people and seek that which is pure and kind instead of trying to find complaint with something that we see as a common thing associated with Israel or with God's people. What a bunch of wasted time. So I really don't waste any of my time on those people. And what I would say is I'm not interested in discussing any of this with you, and you need to stop wasting your time on this.
You know, you see this on the Israeli flag. You see this as a symbol everywhere, the Star of David, the Jewish star, it's thought of it. But others say, no, that is a satanic symbol. And this is a further proof that God is not with modern Israel, and that Judaism is a satanic religion, and that the Jewish people are under a satanic curse. You know, the anti-Semites will be quick to point to all of this. So what about the Star of David? Is it true that it has been used as a sign in satanic circles? Absolutely. And is it true that it has been used as a sign of Israel, the Jewish people, in Jewish history? Yes, it's true. In and of itself, it is neutral. In and of itself, it is just a star with a certain number of points on it. That's all it is. You say, no, but I've seen that the points represent demonic. Listen, in and of itself, it is a simple drawing, a simple artwork. Many years ago, my dad told me the story about a man in prison for sex crimes. And the psychologist sits down with him and draws a picture of a line just across the page like this. And he says, what do you see? And he gives him some pornographic description. He goes, what? Then he draws a circle. What do you see? And the guy gives him a pornographic answer. The psychologist says, what? Then he draws a square. Same thing. And the psychologist said to him, sir, you have a filthy mind. He goes, what? You're the one showing me the pornographic pictures. No, they were just lines and circles. These are just images with no meaning in themselves. What?
Israel is celebrating 75 years of independence and Stars of David are to be seen everywhere, but Star of David is not really a Jewish symbol. On the Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, you can see Islamic buildings from the Mamluk period that has Stars of David. Let's check the Ottoman walls of the city. Here's Damascus Gate and not too far from it, yes, that's right, Star of David. At the northeast corner of the old city we have Herod's Gate or Bab al-Sahara. And yes, that's right, when you enter it, you'll see 2 Stars of David. I've found 1 Star of David in the Muslim quarter, and next to the tomb of Prophet Samuel, northwest Jerusalem, Ottoman buildings with Stars of David and crescents. Antique dealers are selling Islamic coins from medieval times, including, yes, a Ayyubi coin with a Star of David.
The Canaanites were a brutal and a wicked culture. They frequently engaged in behavior that was considered obviously immoral and decadent, right? A list of the sins that Israel was told to avoid at all costs. Those sins included the Canaanites partook in incest, in child sacrifice, in homosexuality, and in bestiality. Now in your mind, you're going, okay, that sounds familiar. We spoke about this as well when I was telling you guys about the Khazarian kingdom. And I think somebody asked a question yesterday, like, oh, do you know about the Khazars? And I had mentioned to you that, yes, I'm very aware, by the way, because I think that is what was mentioned also in that documentary that Kyrie Irving shared, was that for a period of time, a lot of Israeli historians were writing books and receiving awards for having traced their lineage to the Khazars. A very similar story with that kingdom before it was crushed by Russia and Persia.
What we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
This person writes about Cody's conspiracy, just gives a thumb up, thank you. This person says, I'm glad that you brought up the Frankists. You should look into the Khazars and the origin of the Ashkenazis. BTW, did you know the origin of the word Cabal comes from Kabbalah? Yes, I did. I figured that, by the way, as I was digging into this. And yes, there is a Israeli historian named Abraham Pollock. And there's actually a lot of historians prior to World War II who received awards for saying that the origins of, which is why it was stunning to me to see Kyrie Irving treated in the way that he was treated, 6 steps to get back to your life, because he shared a documentary which was theorizing that the original Jews, I actually didn't watch the end of the documentary, but the point was he was making that documentary suggested that the people that are inhabiting Israel today are not the biblical Jews. That was the point of why he got into trouble. I cannot tell you one way or another. I have not gone into any anthropological research. But what I can tell you is that prior to World War II, and you again can pivot to your browser right now and look up a man named Abraham Pollock, okay, prior to World War II, he extensively wrote about, and the Israeli historians extensively wrote about the fact that they were the Khazars. They were like, yeah, here's the evidence, blah, blah, blah. He received awards from Tel Aviv University. And then suddenly after World War II, they said to him, like, this research was not helpful. And they just stopped printing his books. So I don't know. I literally can't tell you. And now if you ask someone about that, they'll say, oh, well, the science changed. Yes, we know. The science always changes. The research always changes. Very convenient. But that's what that person is referring to. I'm just letting you know when he says the Khazars. Now, in case you're not familiar at all with who the Khazars are, outside of whether or not you can draw a line from the Khazar Empire. The Khazarian Empire, my understanding, and I have not done enough research into it, essentially it was an empire. And can you fact check it again? This would be in Ukraine, and what would be modern Ukraine? And let me know in my ear when you dig that up, Mark.
We're checking.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that it was in what would have been deemed modern Ukraine. It all goes back to Ukraine. But essentially, they were worshiping and doing things that were considered so immoral and so corrupt. And I'm talking about sexual stuff. And I'm also talking about in the way that they cheated people, that they were given an option from modern, I would say Iran, but Persia and Russia, like either you convert to one of the faiths that we think will make you more moral, or we will crush you. And so there was this mass conversion in the 8th century, and you can fact check me on that too. I think it was the 8th century where the Khazarians mass converted to Judaism as the faith. And to be clear, it was the people that were running this empire at the top who were just up to no good, and they carried on their corruption. They carried on their sexual deviancy despite pretending to have converted to Judaism. That doesn't mean the people that they ruled over didn't meaningfully convert. I'm sure they did, but the people at the top didn't. And so Russia and I'm saying Iran because my brain is not doing. Russia and Persia teamed up and crushed the Khazarian Empire. And so there has been a theory for a while that what is happening is that the Khazarians are reassembling, and that essentially they want to crush Russia and Iran, which is kind of happening right now, actually, which is interesting to think about. I hadn't even thought about that until right now, that the elites do seem to really want war with Russia and Iran. But I'm just giving you guys that information so that you can know why that person commented on that. I can only tell you books that I've read from Israeli historians, but they say the science has been updated, so who knows? Now it's what was once established Israeli science is now anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So I can't tell you what's right and what's wrong anymore in today's world.
As far as the alleged conversion of the Khazars, you can read it, Yehuda Halevi's book, The Khazari, that it may be true that as there is debate and discussion, there are Turkic people a little over 1,000 years ago, that some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism and then became part of the larger Jewish people. Khazars as a whole disappeared from history. That's it. End of subject. There is no Khazarian mafia. There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero. Absolutely zero. Some of them may have willfully converted to Judaism, maybe mainly the leaders.
The Jews, those who call themselves Jews today and live in Israel, they have created their narrative.
You say, well, where the name Ashkenazi came from? So a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now emigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Yafet is a myth, 100% false, zero truth to it. Just study the history.
This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
Maybe you will ask, who is Mr. Milikowski?
I did ask, and you told me, but I didn't know before.
He is Benjamin Netanyahu. This is the real name.
Prime Minister or President of Israel.
The colonial settler state of Israel.
There are Ashkenazi Jews who are entirely European in their DNA. That's why you're not allowed to have a DNA test in Israel, because it will reveal that virtually none of them are Semitic. Virtually none of them have any ancestral connection to the land. I was viciously assaulted by a manager in the BBC who had recently converted to Judaism. It's fine. I love all religions. But you can't say I've now converted to Judaism and therefore I have a right to go to the land of Palestine and live in the house of someone whose ancestors have been living in it for thousands of years.
Are you familiar with the Khazar theory? There's a theory, it's widely accepted as anti-Semitic, that Ashkenazi Jews come from the Khazars and they're not Levantine. But DNA tests.
It's not anti-Semitic. It's a question of fact. So Shlomo Sand, for example, has argued that, I think probably exaggerated, but it's simply a question of fact. If my ancestors from the Ukraine have Khazar roots, changes nothing. I'm Jewish. My grandfather was Jewish. My family happens to have a story saying that we're descended from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, that's part of the culture. Doesn't matter what the DNA shows.
Now let's talk about the Jews. And I'm doing this, I'm doing asterisks. I'm not asterisks, here's quotations, air quotations here, because you see this a lot, that people who have not done enough research, in my view, who think that this is a Jewish conspiracy. And this is kind of me, by the way, the same response when you get to people when I say, I was baptized Catholic and I'm so happy about it. Oh, what about the Catholic conspiracy? They talk about Catholics and pedophilia. And we're going to talk about all of that today, because I'm just feeling tired of the cowardice of people who know what's happening and refuse to say it because they're fearful that they're going to be killed. And yes, I recognize the people that we're dealing with are psychopaths. Yes, I recognize people shot a president, a Catholic president, in broad daylight when he was with his wife. Okay, that's all very real. But what is the alternative to that? You stay quiet when we know the truth. We stay quiet and we allow these people to take over the world, which they are very close to doing. We pass this off to our children. Like Andrew said, it is going to take not just brave men, but it's also going to take brave women. And women, you know how to research, and I'm going to give all of you guys the tools to understand what is happening, okay? All of the faiths, Muslim, okay? If we're talking about Islam, we're talking about Judaism, we are talking about Christianity, have been infiltrated. All of them. There is not one of them that has not been infiltrated by a satanic cult that practices pedophilia, okay, listen to me, as a religious sacrament. I am going to tell you what the name of this satanic cult is so that you can now do your own research. Now, I will caution you that you cannot, with this particular name, trust Wikipedia as a source because it's hiding in plain sight. But they have virtually wiped his name from the internet, despite the fact that he has garnered so much power that I am going to show you that a Supreme Court justice who openly worshiped this religion, okay? So again, they've infiltrated religions. They have infiltrated all of them.
As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. My next guest treats ritually abused children in her therapist practice. She feels that the problem is much more widespread than any of us can imagine. Says there's no doubt in her mind that the children and adults that she treats are telling the truth. Tina Grossman, we're glad to have all of you join us here on the show. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were
right.
abused.
I was born into a family that believes in this.
And this is does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know...
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back.
Now, you were telling us earlier that this was that the practice with the Kilroy death was a religion called
Palamayombe, which not all people who practice Palamayombe obviously sacrifice. I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and perverting them to the worship of evil.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be Caribbean to do it.
No.
Yes.
The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, that's not a very typical thing. I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies.
An established fact that these pedophiles are in power, okay? Now, I learned about this quite accidentally, by the way. I didn't mean to learn about this. I was so shocked. I was coming apart when I learned that Sigmund Freud created psychoanalysis to protect pedophiles. I thought, how could this be? How could Sigmund Freud do this? How could the world not be speaking about this? A guy who worked at the archives, learned German, read his notes, and discovered, this Harvard guy, that he was protecting pedophiles, that psychoanalysis was created as a means to convince rape victims who said, my dad raped me when I was a child, these women that were coming in to see him, that they were crazy. Gaslighting them. No, actually, you're just attracted to your dad. That is the origin story of Sigmund Freud. And I landed upon a book. I believe the book was written, and you can look this up, scholars, David Bacon. I'm going to look this up, guys, so mind the typing here because I want to make sure I give you this exact book because I was interested in Freud. Let's see what this is called. I think it is David Bacon. I think I got that right. Yes, it's called Sigmund Freud and the Jewish Mystical Tradition, okay? David Bacon is, I'm pretty sure he is a historian. I think he worked at Columbia, but I'm going to look this up for you guys right here. Okay. He was a major influence in how the field of psychology implemented the use of statistics, blah, blah, blah. He went to Brooklyn College. He went to Ohio State University. He taught at University of Chicago, Ohio State, Harvard, York University, and he got quite interested in the Jewish mystical tradition and learned that psychoanalytic concepts actually derived from Kabbalah, okay? It is utterly absurd to suggest that the people who worship, who deem the Torah to be their holy book are all worshiping the Kabbalah, the Zohar. What he discovered in his work, right, and when you read that book, you will see this, was that Sigmund Freud was a Kabbalist, and he starts speaking at length about this great Jewish schism that happened when a bunch of Jewish people believed that Jacob Frank was their Messiah, until they realized, and actually Jews were the first one who expelled the Frankists. They said, get the heck out of here, what are you doing? After they had a sexual ritual, they were actually expelled from the region. They realized, what the heck is this? And at that moment, what the Frankists did was there was a mass conversion because they taught this as a religious rite. You have to deceive and you have to infiltrate. They converted into the Catholic faith, okay? Not all of them, but some of them converted into the Catholic faith, and you will see down the line as you study this that some of them converted back and some of them went to Christians, and that they encouraged over and over again for them to essentially deceive the world through mass conversions.
You see, the Bible makes a distinction, Mr. President, between two groups of Jews. One is called the Synagogue of Satan. There's two different kinds. And those people, in the latter days, it's called the remnant of God's people, which will be Jewish people. And then there's the Synagogue of Satan. And nearly all of your religious deceptions in the latter days, what the Bible speaks, latter days will be 1,000 years, what they call the Synagogue of Satan. In other words, they are energized by a supernatural power called the devil. This is what the Bible teaches, whether you believe it or don't believe it. This is the biblical teaching, and this is what I believe. And I believe that they have a strange brilliance about them. They're smart, and they are energized, in my judgment, by a supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else, but they're not smart.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't. They had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany, and the media. They had the whole thing, you see. But he went about it wrong. But this stranglehold has got to be broken, or this country is going to go down the drain.
You believe that?
Yes, sir.
I can't ever say it, but I believe it.
No, but if you get elected the second time, you might be able to do something.
Now, this guy is very controversial. We don't have that much time to get into it. We'll have to save his story for another day. But he essentially becomes the face of Auschwitz. He published tons of literature about what happened while he was at Auschwitz as a survivor. And then other survivors of Auschwitz said he was making it all up and he was never there. And then they couldn't find him in the records. And they said, I mean, this is another Auschwitz survivor, that he was stealing the identity of another person who was there, but it wasn't him. It gets crazy. I only mention that because you will again see that identity crisis could have been the name of this series. It seems to be a running theme in this family. And also identity crisis is a running theme with anything that involves Israel.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israel, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time,
I know. We don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews?
You can convert to Judaism. You can't convert to a blood family. You cannot convert to a race. Judaism is a religion. That's all it is. The religion created the Jewish people. The definition of a Jewish person is somebody who is transformed by receiving the Torah.
Thank you. I'll answer that question.
Go ahead.
I will help you. After the demise of Solomon, we now have the northern and southern kingdom of Israel.
Yes.
So when we talk about Jews, Jews are Israelites, but all Israelites are not Jews. The 10 tribes that got lost are not Jews. They were Israelites.
Well, it's depending.
So minority cannot swallow the majority. We are here. We are the majority down here. So you are minority, and we are older than you.
And to the people who really do believe that God's chosen people rape, murder, destroy, pillage, lie, deceive, blackmail, Jeffrey Epstein, all of our politicians, buy, purchase, threaten, manipulate, goodness, you may really want to crack open a Bible if you think that those are the signs of God's chosen people. Shoot presidents in broad daylight. Yeah, no. It shouldn't take you a theology course. It should just take a little bit of common sense to tell you that no, that is not what God's chosen people do. God's chosen people were, as it was prophesied, Christ was going to come. God's chosen people, it was prophesied. And guess what they did when Christ came? They followed him. And at the moment that you followed Christ and became a Christian, you didn't become unchosen. Christians are the chosen people because Christians, real Christians, not the ones who have been baptized in the liturgy of the Holocaust and are defending these demonic actions, but the ones who are willing to take being maimed and caricatured and smeared and lied about to say something that is true, which is that we're not pro-life sometimes, okay? We're pro-life all the time. Life is precious, and murder is never okay. Yeah, I think that it should be abundantly obvious at this moment in time, at this moment in history, who God's chosen actually are. And it ain't the Polish Bibi Netanyahu. If there's ever been to me any person that I would say most clearly represents the Synagogue of Satan, it would be that man and maybe Rabbi Shmuley. And here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.